5 days, every day people are getting saved. Did you do the math? You know? And the daily thing is still going on in Acts 16, which is 51. And it's not just in one location according to Acts 16. All the churches were growing daily. You follow me? So what would be a reasonable number? This is what after I've earned the right to speak, I'm getting all excited and talking. I don't do this when they're in my room. Just listen, talk to them about their kids, talk to them about everything in life. Because I love these people, they're just so precious. That guy that died after he came to, I love this family, So I'm not wanting to lambast them. But after I've earned the right, and they're trusting me a little bit, I say, look, in Acts 16 it says that all the churches are growing daily. In Acts 2, 20 years before, Jerusalem church is growing daily. What would be a reasonable number to you? And this thing is expanding, man. It's not contracting, right? I mean, everything that we know about this movement, the Christian movement in the first century, is expanding. There's stuff that's not in the Bible. Like Thomas. Thomas, doubting Thomas. Do you know where he ended up in the 50s and the 60s? India, man. And that's not in the book of Acts. We don't know how many people he won along the way. It's not there. I'm just going with the Bible right now. And this is daily. So I say, well, what's a reasonable number? Like 2 a day? Nah, that couldn't be. Right? This is just unreasonable. 10 a day? 100 a day? I mean, we're talking about the whole Mediterranean. Churches all over the place, they're all growing, and these people are doing miracles. It's not like Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on doors. Hey, I asked them at this point, I say, hey, how many people did you gain in a space of 50 years? Oh, 5 billion? You mean the apostles couldn't do that when they were raising the dead? Come on. If you guys gained 5 million in 50 years, are you telling me that they couldn't gain any more than 50,000? Come on. You get them to where, this 144,000 number is shaky, you see. So you go back to that first page about how many people. So now we're down to AD 31, and we know that in Acts 4, the gate beautiful, 5,000 males. It says the number grew to 5,000 males. By the way, it definitely says males there. And they a lot of times they counted by males, right? Like at the feeding of 5,000 and feeding of 4,000. But we count males. So how many women plus children that are, of a knowledgeable age, like 12 years old or 11 years old? We generally think that who knows what the age of accountability is. That's too tough for me. But we know that there's children when there's women, right? And some of them are in the number or about to be in the number. So I would say by AD 31, you're up to about 15,000, otherwise you're being unreasonable. That's just in Jerusalem. That's just in Jerusalem. We're getting close. We've only passed 1 year. We've got 66 more years to go. And in AD 32, and I don't want to read all these, you can look it up, it talks about multitudes of men and women. AD 35, the number of disciples in Jerusalem grew greatly, and a great company of priests were meeting. This is right on the heels of using numbers like 3,000, 5,000. You know what I mean? He's saying, more. AD 37. Acts 8, you remember Acts 8, after the persecution of Saul and Stephen and all that. They went throughout Judea, Samaria. I wanted you to see that word, Judea. It wasn't just Jerusalem that had disciples. Of course, Jerusalem was the headquarters. That's the thing about reading the Bible, the book of Acts. The Acts is often wrongly called, because the King James puts the title at the top, the Acts of the Apostles. It's not. The Acts is the Acts of Paul, pretty much. And I've got 1 chapter of Peter. You follow me? And then 1 chapter of a deacon named Stephen. We don't know what was going on with Thaddeus. We don't know what was going on with Bartholomew or all these guys. Judas, the son of whatever his name was. There's so many of them. They were scattering. And at first they stayed in Jerusalem, as we know. But eventually they went out. We don't know what they did. We don't know what Thomas didn't do or did do. But we do know what Paul did, and we do know what Peter did. And just them is enough to this whole system. And then also in 1 Thessalonians 2:14, Paul talks about many churches being in Judea during this time. There were churches all over. Think about that. Think about the places Jesus went, you know, like in Judea, like Jericho, for example. He healed a blind guy in Jericho. Do we really seriously think there weren't any believers in Jericho? Of course there were. How about Bethany? Do you think there were any believers in Bethany where Lazarus got raised from the dead? Of course there were. You know, it's just logical. On and on and on it goes. So then we have Acts 11, scattered people. Then, you know, we know the story of how it went from Jews to Samaritans to Gentiles. Now this is interesting. We hear mostly about Antioch at first, right? Barnabas and Paul go to Antioch. Look at the way the numbers are described. And this is AD 42 now. 9 years have gone by. Acts 11:21, a great number of Gentile believers believed in Antioch. In 44 AD, Antioch, much people. The word for much people is ochlos, a crowd, a huge crowd he's talking about, added to the Lord under Barnabas, just Barnabas. This is before Saul came into the picture. Then in Acts 11:26, much people again under Saul and Barnabas. So Antioch became huge, you know, became a huge church, comparable to Jerusalem in size. You know why we know that? Because in the next passage that I have there in Acts 11:29, they say, hey, we're going to send money to these guys. Remember, Agabus came up and says, there's going to be a famine. So when there's a difficulty, you're going to help the people that need it most, right? And the Jerusalem people were being disliked more than the people that were being called Christians in Antioch. So far, the persecution hadn't come there yet, you know. The persecution was mostly in Jerusalem. So the Antioch Gentile believers say, oh, we've got to help those guys out. If there's a famine coming and they don't have jobs, we've got to help them out. So they send money. And, I mean, if there's 10,000 people in Jerusalem and there's 100 people in Antioch, their silly money is not going to help, right? There must have been some kind of parity. Otherwise, the money wouldn't have worked. So do we see that the thing is growing and it's getting huge? And it goes on and on and on. Then I turn the page to Acts where I go, just think with me, you know. And this person is thinking with you when you're talking with me, or on the right to speak to them. The problem with this, it takes a little bit of Bible knowledge. And most people don't have Bible knowledge, you know. That's a big problem. But if you know something about Acts 2 through 28, all these names in here will ring out at you. Egypt, Libya. These were people that were represented on the day of Pentecost. People that came to Jerusalem from these places and went back. You know, saved people. Ethiopia, how about that Ethiopian eunuch? You think he went back and got his household saved and maybe a few of his slaves? You know, maybe Candace the queen? At least the Ethiopians say so. Spain. Paul went to Spain. He said he was going to Spain. He got out of jail after he said he was going to Spain, so we believe. He went to Spain. All over Italy. Remember when Paul was going up to Italy? He'd never been to Rome when he wrote to a Roman church, right? And it was a very well-established church. Not established by Peter, but that's a separate subject. And all the way up, remember the 3 taverns, Puteoli, and where these brothers are in Italy? All the way up, he's going up in chains. The brothers come out to meet him. Every town in Italy has Christians in it. You follow? You get the picture. It's not some small deal. It's big enough to start throwing people to the lions about. It's big. It's a big deal. Nero didn't like it, you know. So Antioch, there's 2 Antiochs, Samaria, Caesarea, Nazareth, Jericho, all these places. I just can't list them all. You know, the 7 churches in the book of Revelation all had huge numbers of people, at least 1,000. So the churches in the various cities are increasing. 51, Acts 17, Thessalonica, on and on and on. I can't do it all. You know, I can't describe it all. But now I'm going to bring you down to the last and most important point in the book of Acts. You got to come with me to Acts 21. If I lost you, you're going to stay with me with Acts 21 and 20. This is a critical verse. Really critical verse. This is the scene. Paul has been all around the Mediterranean 3 times. He's won all kinds of converts. He's gone to places like Cyprus and Malta, where the leader has gotten saved, and all kinds of people have been saved. And he comes back to Jerusalem because he's first. Everyone told him, "Don't go, Paul. You're nuts." Remember that? Even prophecies. Don't go, Paul. That's a little bit controversial, but he went. He goes to Jerusalem. he goes in there and sees James and, a couple other guys. And James goes, hey, Paul, it's great that you're winning all these people to the Lord, but the people here still don't get it. They really are into kosher food, and I'm talking about the Christians in Jerusalem. They're really into the Jewish customs. And we've taught them that it's all about faith, but they still do these things, and we're not really opposed to them doing it. Please don't upset them, Paul. You follow me? I'm taking a little liberty with this thing. And when James and Peter were describing their situation that they had concern for Judea, right, in Jerusalem, he goes, there are myriads of people here that believe and are faithful to the law, that are observing the law. Right? Didn't he say that? You turn, Acts 21:20. He said there are myriads. The unfortunate thing is the King James translated myriads as thousands. And here's something you're going to have to bear with me, all right? Every country has different language and different setup. But we think in decimals, right? And we go 10, 1 0. 1 with a 0 is a 10. 1 with 100, 2 zeros is 100, right? Then we go 1,000. Then after that, we start adding adjectives to the words. You follow me? You got 10, 100, 1,000. They're separate words, right? 10 is a different word to 100. 100 is a different word to 1,000. Then after that, we say a certain kind of 1,000, 10,000, because it has 4 zeros. Well, other countries, the language doesn't do that. In other words, they go 10, 100, 1,000. And when you get to 10,000, it's not a certain kind of 1,000 with an adjective 10 in front of it. It's a whole other word. In Greek, it's myriados, myriad, you see? And in the language that I'm familiar with too, Japanese, it's the same. They have a separate word, a separate Chinese character for 10,000. So concept, all distinct, all on its own. We don't have that. So we throw in the word 10,000 and we get lazy and say, oh, I didn't mean, just thousands is fine. No! Peter and James in Acts chapter 21:20. You look at an interlinear Bible, I've got one with you, it'll say 10,000. He says there are multiple tens of thousands of people here in Jerusalem. Many tens of thousands of people. Please, Paul, please don't offend these people. Well, Paul couldn't avoid offending somebody there, and he got arrested anyway, right? But the point I want to make is, and all the Jehovah's Witnesses, they have an interlinear Bible that has the same name. You can using the World Translation, interlinear Bible, and say, open to Acts 21:20, would you? How many believers were there in Jerusalem when Paul went back to visit in 58 AD? Oh, multiple tens of thousands. We haven't even covered all the other cities at all. I mean, just in Jerusalem, the whole thing is destroyed. You get to 90,000 and you're shaky. You know what I'm saying? There could have been 90,000 just in Jerusalem. Here's another concept, one more concept. I know you're getting tired. Are you with me? Remember in 1 Corinthians 15, when Paul was describing the 500 that was in AD 57 that he said that. 1 Corinthians was written around AD 57. Paul said there were 500 people that saw Jesus all at once. And then what did he say? Some of them were asleep, but most of them were still living. Remember that phrase? Think of that. Stay with me. So in 57 AD, while the numbers are growing, right, people are dying. People are falling asleep. By 96,